The Amazon rainforest looked like a dark, breathing ocean under the small cargo plane, its canopy unbroken, except where rivers sliced through like liquid silver. Storm clouds hung on the horizon, swollen and heavy, but over the forest itself, the sky was strangely clear, as if something down there had pushed the storms away. Ethan Reyes pressed his forehead to the tiny oval window, eyes tracing the endless green. He was used to forests. He'd spent years mapping them for satellites and climate models, but there was something different about this stretch. The foliage wasn't just dense, it was unnaturally uniform, as if someone had painted the canopy instead of planting it. "That's your zone," said the pilot, shouting over the engine noise. "Coordinates you sent. See anything special?" Ethan hesitated. On his laptop, the satellite images showed a pattern hidden under the trees, faint, straight lines, too regular to be rivers, too geometric to be random. They formed a shape that looked like a circle inside a hexagon, something you'd expect in a science fiction movie, not in the middle of the world's largest rainforest. But out the window, no roads, no clearings, no visible ruins. "Just trees," Ethan called back, "as far as I can see." The pilot shrugged. "That's the Amazon. It hides what it wants." They flew another 20 minutes before the pilot pointed ahead. "There, landing strip. Built for some logging project that never happened. I'll put us down there. After that, you're on your own." The landing strip was little more than a scar, a narrow strip of packed dirt carved into the forest. The plane bounced hard as it touched down, rattling Ethan's teeth. When they finally rolled to a stop, the forest closed around them like a wall. Heat and humidity hit him the moment he stepped out, wrapping around him like wet wool. The air smelled of soil, leaves, and something metallic he couldn't place. "You sure about this?" the pilot asked, lighting a cigarette and looking around uneasily. "Most people don't ask to be dropped off this deep unless they're either crazy, criminals, or missionaries." "I'm not a missionary," Ethan said, hoisting his pack, "and I'm only a little crazy." The pilot snorted. "I'll be back in 3 days, same time. If you're not here." He didn't finish. He didn't need to. The plane roared back down the strip, lifted awkwardly into the air, and dwindled to a speck. The sound of the engine faded, replaced by the living noise of the forest. Insects chirping in layered rhythms, birds calling, leaves brushing against each other in a slow, continuous sigh. For a moment, Ethan just stood there, alone in the silence between sounds, feeling very small. He checked his GPS. The screen showed a familiar cluster of numbers that had haunted his dreams for months, the coordinates that didn't make sense. A place where satellites went glitchy, compasses misbehaved, and shadows didn't match the expected angle of the sun. A place cloaked in rumors. They called it, those few who dared speak of it at all, Aurelia, the City of Gold. But the stories online, buried in obscure forums and conspiracy threads, went further. They spoke of an ancient city hidden under the canopy, a place of blinding metal and impossible geometry, untouched by time. Some said it was the lost city of Dorado, finally found. Others said it was something older, not built by humans at all. Ethan hadn't come because he believed in tales of aliens building cities in the jungle. He'd come because something in the data was wrong. He had spent years studying satellite anomalies for a private research firm that quietly sold information to governments and corporations. He'd seen weird things before. Ghost readings from sensor errors, artifacts from cloud cover, distortions from atmospheric interference. But this anomaly was different. Every time a satellite passed over this patch of forest, its instruments recorded subtle, consistent distortions, a faint but precise pattern of electromagnetic interference. It showed up in radar, infrared, even gravity field data. Something was down there, something massive and complex, and whatever it was deliberately hiding. He started walking. The forest quickly swallowed the old landing strip. Trees closed overhead, turning the light from sharp white to soft green. Vines dangled like ropes, some as thick as his wrist. The ground was uneven, a tangle of roots and decomposing leaves. Insects found him immediately, drawn to the sweat on his skin. He moved slowly but efficiently, following the GPS and a digital map he'd stitched together from satellite tiles, radar scans, and LiDAR passes that showed faint hints of structure under the trees. His pack was heavy: tent, food, water filter, small tools, a compact drone, and a custom-built device he'd assembled in his apartment with parts from half a dozen suppliers. A portable sensor array designed to detect the kind of electromagnetic pattern the satellites had seen. Hours passed. The sun climbed and began its descent. The forest thickened, bird calls shifted, some growing quieter, others more insistent. Ethan stopped only briefly to drink water and adjust his course. Around late afternoon, he noticed something strange. The forest changed. It was subtle at first. The trees became slightly more uniform in height, the underbrush a little thinner. The air felt cooler, though the sun was still hot. The sounds of insects remained, but they seemed to fall into a more regular rhythm, as if synced to a hidden beat. He paused, frowning, and checked the GPS. He was about 5 kilometers from the center of the anomaly. He took a deep breath and kept walking. An hour later, he saw the first sign that the stories might have been more than fantasy. He almost missed it. He was stepping over a particularly large root when something caught his eye. A line too straight to be natural, half buried in the soil. He crouched and brushed away the dirt. It was metal. Not rusted iron or corroded steel, but a smooth, dull gold surface that had no right being in the middle of the jungle floor. It was flat, seamless, and cool to the touch despite the heat. It reflected the light in a strange, soft way, more like polished stone than metal. His heart sped up. He followed the line with his fingers and uncovered another section, then another. It formed a perfect right angle. A corner. Something solid lay beneath the soil, something large. He sat back on his heels, mind racing. It could be a buried structure, some ancient foundation. It could be modern, left by some unknown operation. It could be... He forced himself not to leap to conclusions. A sudden thought made him reach for his sensor device. He turned it on. Immediately, the display lit up with readings. The anomaly that had been a faint whisper from orbit was now an insistent hum. Peaks and valleys formed a pattern on the screen, a complex wave that looked almost intentional. His pulse hammered in his ears. "Okay," he murmured. "Okay, you're onto something." He marked the location, took several photos, and then made a difficult decision. Night was coming. He needed to set up camp. Whatever lay under the ground would still be there in the morning. He picked a slightly elevated spot, away from large trees that might drop branches. He pitched his tent, ate a quick, tasteless meal from a foil packet, and recorded notes into his audio log. "This is Ethan Reyes, Day 1. I've reached the anomaly zone, found exposed metal at ground level, non-corroded, gold-colored, forming precise angles. Sensor readings are off the charts. I don't know what this is yet, but it's not natural and it's not recent." He paused, listening to his own voice in the dimming light. "Whoever built this," he added softly, "wanted it hidden." The forest grew darker outside the tent. He could hear things moving, unseen, small animals, insects, the slow shifting of leaves. He set his sensor to record continuously and placed it near the metal corner, trailing a cable back to a small monitor near his sleeping bag. At first, the readings were steady, high but consistent. Then a little after midnight, they changed. He woke to a soft, intermittent beeping. The monitor's tiny screen flickered, lines of data shifting in real time. The wave pattern had changed from a steady hum to something else entirely. It looked like pulses. Ethan blinked, rubbed his eyes, and leaned closer. The pulses had a rhythm, not perfectly regular, but not random either. They clustered, shifted, repeated. "A code," his mind whispered. "It looks like a code." He grabbed a notebook and began jotting down the sequence, converting peaks and valleys into numbers, then into ones and zeros, almost without thinking. Years of working with signal analysis kicked in. After 10 minutes, his skin prickled. The pattern was repeating. Not exactly, but close enough that it wasn't noise. Something under the ground was emitting a signal that changed in response to... what? His presence? The sensor? The time of day? He considered waking fully, setting up more equipment, but exhaustion dragged at him. He compromised. He adjusted the sensor to log every variation, then lay back down, watching the wobbly lines on the screen until his eyes closed. He dreamed of golden lines spreading through the forest, forming a glowing network under the trees, connecting to something vast and sleeping. In the morning, the forest was bright and deceptively peaceful. Sunlight speared through gaps in the canopy, painting the ground in shifting patterns. Bird calls filled the air. The sensor was quiet. The pattern had stopped around 3 a.m. He uploaded the data to his laptop and ran a quick analysis. The result was unnerving. The signal was unlike any natural electromagnetic disturbance he'd ever seen. It had structure, layers, like chords in music. He laughed once, a short, disbelieving sound. "If this is a hoax," he muttered, "it's the most expensive one in history." He packed his gear and pushed deeper into the anomaly. The changes in the forest grew more obvious. The trees were still wild, but there was a subtle order to them, a pattern in their spacing, the angle of their branches, the way vines climbed in spirals rather than in random tangles. Flowers bloomed in clusters that almost looked like symbols when viewed from the right angle. There were fewer insects on his skin. He realized that with a start. He had barely swatted at anything in the last hour. The constant buzzing near his ears had diminished. Even the mosquitoes seemed reluctant to cross some invisible boundary he had unknowingly stepped through. By midday, his GPS began acting up. The coordinates jumped a few meters back and forth, then meters became dozens of meters. For a moment, it claimed he had moved half a kilometer in 3 seconds. "Come on," he grumbled, smacking the device lightly. "Not now." He checked his compass. The needle spun lazily, then pointed south, then east, then refused to settle at all. That's when he realized he had reached the center. The anomaly wasn't just under him, it was around him. He stopped walking. The forest around him was wrong. Beautiful, but wrong. The trees were taller here, their trunks unnaturally straight, their bark smooth and almost glossy. The leaves were a deeper green, almost blue in some angles. The undergrowth thinned to a carpet of soft moss that muted his footsteps. Light shifted strangely. Sunbeams seemed to bend, pooling in odd places. Shadows didn't always line up with their sources. He felt a pressure in his ears, like the feeling before a storm. He reached slowly into his pack and pulled out the drone, a compact foldable design with a stabilized camera and a suite of sensors. He launched it with practiced hands. The drone rose through the branches, dodging leaves, and broke through the canopy. He watched its feed on his phone. What he saw made his breath catch. From above, the forest canopy in this area formed a perfect circle. The trees at the edge of the circle were taller and denser, forming a thick ring. Inside the ring, the canopy dipped slightly, as if covering a basin. And within that basin, just visible through gaps in the leaves, were lines, faint curved lines of dull gold, concentric circles, straight spokes. From the air, it looked like the top of a buried machine or a city. Then the drone's signal cut out. The screen went black. Ethan swore. He tried reconnecting, but the controller flashed an error, signal interference. He checked the last coordinates transmitted. The drone had been almost directly above him when it went silent. "Okay," he whispered. "Okay, so you don't like eyes from above." He swallowed and looked around again. "Then I guess I look from below." He walked forward. The carpet of moss yielded silently under his boots. The air grew cooler, denser. The sounds of the forest changed. There were fewer bird calls, more low, throbbing hums he couldn't identify. After maybe 20 minutes, though time felt slippery here, he saw it. At first, it was just a line at the corner of his vision, something straight, metallic, out of place, then another and another. He parted a curtain of hanging lianas and stepped into a wide, perfectly circular clearing. He was standing on gold, not loose gold, not nuggets or coins, but a solid surface, a huge disk of dull, matte gold, 30 meters across, embedded in the earth. Its surface was etched with grooves and patterns that formed concentric circles, intersecting lines and symbols he didn't recognize. Around the edge of the disk, the forest pressed in, trees bending slightly away from it, as if respecting some invisible boundary. Ethan's knees felt weak. He walked carefully to the center of the disk, his footsteps echoing faintly in a way that ground should not allow. The gold surface was warm, but not burning. It felt alive. At the very center of the disk was a raised platform, waist-high, hexagonal, with a smaller circle on top. That smaller circle was inset with a material that was not metal. It looked like black glass, but when he leaned over it, he couldn't see his reflection. Just depth, as if looking into a deep well. His sensor device beeped wildly. The screen was a mess of overlapping lines. Slowly, almost reverently, he laid his palm on the black surface. The world changed. There was no flash of light, no dramatic sound, just a soft, almost inaudible hum that seemed to come from everywhere at once. The forest around the clearing softened, the trees at the edge blurred, their trunks bending and stretching as if made of smoke. The sky dimmed, though no clouds visibly moved. For a dizzy moment he thought he was fainting. Then something moved beneath his hand. The black surface lit from within, lines of pale blue light spreading outward from where his skin touched. They raced along the grooves carved into the gold disk, filling them with light, forming a glowing pattern that matched the satellite's anomaly maps. The air vibrated, and then he heard a voice. It wasn't a voice in the usual sense, no sound, no language, more like a series of impressions, feelings, compressed into something his brain translated as thought. Contact established. He staggered back, hand jerking away, heart pounding. The light in the grooves dimmed slightly, but did not go out. The forest remained blurred at the edges of his vision, as if he stood inside a bubble where reality was thinner. He swallowed hard. "Hello?" he said, feeling ridiculous. There was a pause, then another wave of impressions reached him. Biological entity, species, hominid, pattern match, human. He laughed, high and shaky. "Yes, human Ethan. My name is Ethan. Name Ethan, function observer, role intermediate level analyst. Access unauthorized but non-hostile." The voice carried no tone he could recognize, but somehow he sensed curiosity and relief. "What are you?" he asked, looking around at the glowing lines. Another pause, this one longer. It felt like something searching, choosing. "We are archive. Contextual frame, Aurelia. Primary function, preservation and guardianship. Secondary function, monitoring of biological development. Original designers, extraterrestrial intelligence, non-local to this planetary system." He stared at the disk, then at the sky, then at the trees. "Extraterrestrial," he repeated weakly. "As in, not from Earth." "Confirmed." A tremor ran through him. All the late-night UFO shows, the conspiracy forums, the jokes about ancient aliens, they crashed against the reality in front of him like confused waves. "You're saying this place," he said slowly, "this city was built by aliens? Not a city in your sense. Not residential, not primarily habitational. Structure type. Outpost, station, observatory, vault." The words formed images in his mind, a complex of structures made of gold-like metal, rising above the forest in geometric towers, beams of light scanning the sky, beings of unknown form moving along luminous corridors. "How long?" he asked, barely able to breathe. "How long has this been here?" The answer came with a sense of vast time, of ancientness that made human history feel like a blink. Estimated installation, 72,000 to 120,000 of your years ago, before current humanoid civilizations. He sank to his knees on the golden disk. "You've been here," he whispered, "watching us, watching everything. Observing, recording, intervening rarely." The images came faster now. Glimpses of glacial cycles, migrations of animals, tribes moving through forests not yet fully grown, rivers changing course over millennia. Then more recent flashes. Ships with sails cutting up river, men in armor, the spread of disease, the smoke of rubber extraction, the bright scars of deforestation. Why, he asked, why build this here? Why watch us? The answer came in layers. This location, high biodiversity, critical climatic influence, strategic in planetary ecological stability, your species, rapid adapting, high capacity for cooperation and destruction. Combination requires monitoring. He laughed again, but there was no humor in it. We're a risk. Potential, risk element of potential. He stared at the black centerpiece, the interface, as his mind had begun to call it. How much do you know, he asked. About us? Extensive but incomplete. Some data streams interrupted, some archives sealed. Direct cognitive interface not attempted with your species until now. He blinked. Until now? You initiated contact. You followed patterns, tracked anomalies, approached center, engaged interface. Authentication, ad hoc, but acceptable. The faint hint of wryness he thought he detected in that last phrase almost made him smile. So you've been hiding, he said, from our satellites, our sensors. Active camouflage, electromagnetic refraction, gravity field shaping, visual disruption, designed to avoid discovery until species reached specific cognitive and technological thresholds. He felt suddenly cold despite the heat. And we've reached it, he said. Yes. That single word, yes, landed with the weight of an invisible verdict. He thought of all the things happening outside this bubble of altered reality. Rising temperatures, burning forests, political chaos, endless arguments over facts while ice melted and oceans rose. Are you here to stop us? He asked quietly. To shut us down if we go too far? The response was slower this time. Primary directive. Non-interference in free development of indigenous intelligences. Secondary directive. Protection of critical biospheric functions. Contingency protocols exist. Contingency, he repeated. That sounds like a very polite word for disaster. Contingencies are not predetermined. They are options. You have options. He stood slowly, legs shaking, and walked in a slow circle on the disk, looking at the glowing patterns. This place, he said. It's under the forest. Is there a whole structure, a city, tunnels, rooms? Yes. Can I see? Another pause. Access level minimal, full entry denied, interface access permitted. He exhaled shakily. So this is as close as I get. Physical entry not optimal for your biology or for structural stability. Many systems dormant. Environment not calibrated for you. Interface sufficient for information transfer. He stopped and stared at the black surface again. You're an archive, he said. You preserve knowledge. Correct. Whose knowledge? Multiple species, multiple worlds, some lost, some active. This outpost contains partial echoes of a much larger network. He felt dizzy imagining it. A cosmic web of outposts like Aurelia, scattered across worlds, quietly watching, recording, sometimes nudging. And the gold? He asked, gesturing at the disk. Why build with gold? Material similarity only. Composition. Alloy unknown to your current technology, optimized for durability, conductivity, and field interactions. Corresponds visually to element you call gold. Local cultures misinterpreted appearance as wealth source. He saw in his mind's eye conquistadors crashing through the forest, driven by myths of a golden city, unaware that what they sought was not made for them. What happened, he asked. Have others found you? Other humans? Yes. The images hit him in a rush. An ancient tribe stumbling into the clearing, kneeling in awe. A shaman touching the interface and seeing visions he could not explain, later turning them into myths of sky gods. Early European explorers stumbling close but turned away by storms and inexplicable confusion. A small group of military men in the 20th century, guided by rumors, reaching the edge of the anomaly, only to have their compasses spin and their radios die, retreating in fear. Directive. Avoid mass conscious discovery before threshold. Contact. Seed only in myths, legends, symbols. Your species needs stories before it can handle structures. He felt a strange, tight ache in his chest. So that's what we've been getting, he said softly. Breadcrumbs, glitches, legends. Enough to nudge, not enough to prove. Correct. Why me? He asked before he could stop himself. Why now? You would attempt to understand, the impression answered. And you would tell others. Your influence at global scale is limited but non-zero. You are not controlled by a state actor. Your cognitive flexibility is above average. He almost laughed. So I'm convenient. You are suitable. He looked around, feeling the weight of more than just trees pressing in. If I tell people what I've found, he said, they'll think I'm crazy, or they'll try to dig you up, or they'll try to weaponize you. Many responses are possible, the archive answered. You cannot predict them all. You can choose your vector. Vector, he muttered. You sound like my old statistics professor. He sat again on the edge of the central platform, breathing slowly. Can you show me? He asked after a moment. Show me what happens if we keep going, if we don't change. Another pause. He felt oddly something like hesitation. Scenario simulations exist. Their display may cause distress. I'm already distressed, he said hoarsely. Show me anyway. The world shifted. He wasn't transported physically. His body remained on the disk, but his mind expanded, held gently by something vast. He saw the Amazon from orbit, green and magnificent. Then, slowly, he watched the green shrink. Patches of brown expanded like a rash. Fires glowed orange in the night. He watched rivers heat and dry, fish populations collapse, storms grow wilder. He watched tipping points, those lines climate scientists talked about in cautious terms. Tip. He saw cities on coasts flood, saw masses of people move, saw conflict flare. He saw governments wrestle over what remained, saw desperation harden into cruelty. In some versions, he saw extraordinary resilience too. Communities banding together, protecting what they could, learning to live with less, replanting, rewilding. But in the worst timelines, it wasn't enough. The organs of the planet, the forests, the oceans, the ice, were pushed too far. One version brought his attention back to the Amazon. It was smaller, fragmented. Aurelia's zone of influence, its electromagnetic field shaping, had tried to protect what it could, bending probabilities so that some fires missed, some cutting projects failed, some politicians lost key votes. But there were limits. In that version, contingency protocols activated. He saw the archive not just as a passive structure, but as something that could shape fields on scales his civilization barely understood. He saw it raising storms, guiding lightning, nudging insects and microbes in ways that could quietly sabotage certain human activities and favor others. He saw a path where the outpost did what it had to do to protect the biosphere, even if that meant drastically reducing human pressure. The images did not show overt war, no beams from the sky, just a sequence of unfortunate events that gradually stripped humans of their ability to dominate the forest. Failed crops in certain regions, new diseases targeting key livestock, supply chains collapsing, sophisticated systems grinding down until those who remained had to live at a different scale. He pulled back from the vision with a gasp, heart-hammering sweat cold on his skin. "Stop!" he croaked. "Stop! That's enough!" The images faded. The forest returned. The golden lines still glowed around him. He took several shuddering breaths. "Is that what you plan to do?" he asked, voice raw. "Just wait, and if we push too far, remove us from the equation." Undecided, probabilities shift constantly. Direct intervention on such scale violates primary directive, but failure to protect biosphere violates secondary. "So you're conflicted," he said. "Correct." There was something almost comforting in knowing that even an alien archive had conflicts. "What if we change?" he asked. "What if enough of us wake up, fight back, protect what's left, replant, rethink everything? What then?" The answer came with a different feeling, lighter, more expansive. Then intervention unnecessary. Outpost purpose fulfilled as observer and support, not enforcer. Manual override of contingency. Pathways becomes possible. "And my role in this?" he asked. "What am I supposed to do with what you've shown me?" "Your species responds strongly to stories," came the reply. "Data alone is insufficient. Fear-based narratives paralyze or divide. Possibility-based narratives unite. You are positioned to weave data and story." He shook his head, almost laughing. "You want me to... what? Go back and tell people I found a hidden alien archive under the Amazon that showed me the end of the world? You choose how to translate contact into your cultural framework. Direct disclosure may fail. Metaphors, fictionalized accounts, documentaries, policy briefs, all are vectors." It took him a moment to realize what it was suggesting. "You want me to lie," he said. "Not lie, encode. Your culture has genres for this: science fiction, speculative documentaries, cinematic narratives. Through them, true patterns can be introduced without triggering defensive reflexes." He thought of the countless stories he'd consumed over the years, of hidden bases, secret archives, lost cities, alien observers. How many of them had nudged his own curiosity? "How many others have you contacted like this?" he asked quietly. The reply surprised him. "Fewer than you assume. Myth spreads fast even from single points. Most contacts limited to non-verbal symbolic impressions. This level of verbal interface, first confirmed instance." He stared at the black surface in stunned silence. "I'm the first," he whispered. "First verbal, not first to feel. Many before you stood here and left with dreams they could not explain." He couldn't help it. He laughed. It sounded half hysterical. "So I'm going to go back," he said, "with a head full of visions from an alien archive hidden under a golden disk in the rainforest. And instead of yelling it from the rooftops, I'm supposed to write a story." Yes, and somehow beneath the absurdity, it made a twisted kind of sense. He closed his eyes and let himself feel it. The weight of responsibility, the impossibility of the task, the slender thread of hope running through it. "If I do this," he said, "if I turn what you showed me into something people can hear, will you keep protecting this place? The forest, the river, the life here?" The answer came without hesitation. "Yes, this outpost will continue its function as long as structural integrity and energy supply are maintained. Your actions can increase probability that additional outposts elsewhere remain dormant or supportive, not defensive." He nodded slowly. "And if we fail?" he asked. Then came an impression not of words, but of a hand hovering over a switch, reluctant, trembling, hoping never to press it. Contingencies remain, but they are not yet fixed. He stepped back from the interface. The lights in the grooves dimmed gradually, fading to the faintest glow, then disappearing. The black surface went dark again, reflecting nothing. The forest around the clearing sharpened. Trees regained their solid outlines. The strange bending of light eased. The pressure in his ears lifted. He felt suddenly ordinary, alone again in a clearing that to any passing eye would just look like a strangely bare circle of earth. Except for the gold under his feet. He didn't know how long he had been connected. Minutes, hours. The sun had moved, but in the Amazon that didn't tell him much. His legs were stiff as he walked to the edge of the disk, hand trailing along the precise, impossibly smooth edge where gold met soil. He paused and looked back at the central platform. "Thank you," he said quietly, "for trusting me, or whatever it is you're doing." No answer came, at least none he could hear. He picked up his pack, checked his water, and took a bearing from the position of the sun and the faint ghost of his GPS reading. His compass still spun uselessly. He walked. Leaving the clearing felt like wading out of a warm pool into colder water. The forest regained its usual randomness. Vines tangled messily. Underbrush thickened. Insects found him again, whining near his ears. At some point his compass settled. His GPS coordinates stopped jumping and began making sense again. By the time the sky began to turn orange between the trees, he was exhausted, legs burning, shoulders aching. He found a spot to camp, far from the gold disk, but still within the anomaly zone. That night, lying in his tent, he didn't sleep quickly. His mind replayed everything, the glowing patterns, the alien voice in his thoughts, the terrible future scenarios, and the fragile, possible better ones. He opened his notebook. On a blank page, he wrote a title, Aurelia, the secret city beneath the Amazon. Then he crossed out city and replaced it with archive. He stared at the words for a long time. Slowly, the story began to pour out of him. He wrote about a scientist following anomalies into the rainforest. He wrote about a hidden golden platform, an interface, an alien intelligence watching from below. He wrote about visions of climate futures, about choices, about contingency and hope, all wrapped in a narrative people could dismiss as just a story if it scared them too much. He wrote until his hand cramped. When he finally slept, he dreamed not of destruction, but of children in faraway apartments, hearing the story one day and feeling something stir in their chests, a curiosity, a fear, a determination. A decision, small at first, to see the planet not as a backdrop, but as a living system in which they were one part. He woke before dawn, packed his gear, and began the long walk back toward the landing strip. 3 days later, dusty and tired, he stood where the plane had dropped him off. The pilot landed with barely disguised relief, eyeing him as if half expecting a ghost. "You look like hell," the man said as Ethan climbed aboard. "Feel worse," Ethan replied. "Find what you were looking for." Ethan thought of the glowing lines, the alien archive, the weight of unseen contingency protocols. "Something like that," he said. On the flight back, as the green ocean rolled away beneath them, he opened his laptop and stared at a blank document. He began to type. The Amazon rainforest looked like a dark, breathing ocean under the small cargo plane. Somewhere far below, under layers of soil and roots and gold, an outpost listened, its fields humming just slightly differently than before. New data had been added to its archive. A human named Ethan, his choices, his vector. Probabilities shifted by the smallest fraction. It was not much, but in a universe of countless outposts, countless worlds, countless decisions, such fractions could mean everything. Perhaps one day, centuries from now, another intelligence, human or otherwise, would access the archive of Aurelia and see this moment recorded. The first time a human and an alien archive had spoken plainly in the heart of the Amazon. They might say this was the beginning, or they might say it was simply another story among many that tipped the balance quietly, invisibly, toward survival instead of collapse. For now, all that existed was a man with a story to tell, a forest with secrets to keep, and a hidden city of gold and light sleeping under the trees, watching, waiting, hoping, even if it would never use that word itself, that the beings on the surface would learn in time. And as you listen to this story now, somewhere far from that golden disk, you become part of it. You carry within you, if only for a moment, the image of Aurelia, a secret, advanced city hidden beneath the Amazon, built by those who came from the stars, not to rule, but to watch and remember. What you do with that image, whether you forget it, laugh at it, fear it, or let it change the way you see forests, technology, and the future, is your part of the archive, your small vector, your fraction of probability. In the end, every great hidden city, every alien archive, every advanced technology is still subject to the simplest, oldest question. What kind of story will we choose to write together?